My ex-wife's sister asked me why I was still single, and for one breathless second I almost said the truest words I'd ever swallowed. Because of you. My name is Caleb Hayes, and 2.5 years ago the whole town of Cedar Harbor watched my marriage to Tessa quietly end. Not in screaming, not in betrayal, but in the soft heartbreak of two people who simply wanted different lives. I rebuilt myself in my family's old boatworks, took in the kids nobody else would hire, and told everyone I was fine being alone. But the woman standing in front of me at the autumn festival wasn't a stranger. She was Sloane, my ex-wife's younger sister, the one who stayed, the one who'd quietly watched me put myself back together piece by piece. And when she tilted her head and asked why a man like me was still single, the answer rose in my chest before I could stop it. So why did I bite back the words that could change everything? Why would my heart betray me with my ex-wife's own sister, of all people? And what would happen the moment one of us finally stopped pretending? Let me take you back to that night. The whole harbor smelled like wood smoke and cinnamon. String lights hung between the lampposts, swinging a little in the cold lake wind, and somewhere a fiddle was playing too fast for anyone to dance to. I wasn't there for the music. I was on my knees by the old bandstand, sanding down a splintered railing that had nearly cut a kid's hand open the year before. I fix that railing every autumn. Nobody asks me to, nobody pays me. It's just the kind of thing I do now, quiet work with my hands, where the wood doesn't ask you how you're holding up. You know there's a whole festival happening behind you, right? I knew that voice before I turned around, soft, warm, with a little laugh hiding underneath it. Sloane. She was holding 2 cups of cider, steam curling off the top, her cheeks pink from the cold. Her scarf was wrapped wrong, the way it always was, like she'd had more important things to think about that morning than herself. That was Sloane in one picture, always taking care of everything except her own self. She handed me a cup. Our fingers touched for half a second. I pretended not to notice. "You're the only man I know who'd rather sand a railing than eat a caramel apple," she said, sitting down on the bandstand step beside me. "Caramel apples are a trap," I said. "You bite in, the whole thing slides off. You're standing there holding a bare stick like a fool." She laughed, really laughed, and something in my chest went tight, because I realized I had been waiting all week to hear that sound, and I hadn't even known it. We sat there a while. The lake was black and shining. Down by the water, 3 teenagers were chasing each other with sparklers, and one of them, a tall, quiet boy named Marcus, lifted his hand to wave at me. A year ago, that kid wouldn't look anyone in the eye. A year ago, everybody in town had already decided what he'd become. I gave him a job in my shop instead. Now he waves at me at festivals. Sloane saw me watching him. "You changed that boy's whole life, you know," she said softly. I shrugged. "He changed his own. I just gave him a hammer." She was quiet for a moment. Then she turned and looked at me, really looked, the way nobody had looked at me in a long, long time. "Can I ask you something, Caleb?" "You're gonna ask either way." She smiled, but it didn't quite reach the worry in her eyes. "Why are you still single?" And just like that, the whole festival went silent in my ears. The fiddle, the wind, the laughing kids, gone. There was only her face, and the steam between us, and the question hanging in the cold air like it had been waiting 2.5 years to be asked. Because here's the thing she didn't know. Here's the thing I'd buried so deep I almost fooled myself. It wasn't that I couldn't love again after Tessa. It was that I already did. I had spent 2 years watching this woman bring me soup when I forgot to eat, watching her save a bookshop that was drowning, watching her laugh with her whole heart, even when her own life was falling apart. And somewhere in all that watching, I'd fallen. For my ex-wife's sister. The words came up my throat before I could stop them. "Because of you." 2 syllables that would burn down everything. Her family, my place in this town, the careful, quiet, safe little life I'd built out of broken pieces. I opened my mouth and I lied. "Guess I just haven't found a reason to stop being single," I said, looking down at the railing, but I felt her go still beside me. I felt it the way you feel the temperature drop right before a storm. Because in that half second before I looked away, she'd seen something in my face, something true, something I wasn't supposed to feel. She didn't say anything. She just looked at her cider, and her thumb traced the rim of the cup, around and around. "Sloane," I started. "It's getting cold," she said quickly, standing up. "Mom's expecting me." And she walked away into the lights and the smoke, leaving me kneeling there by a railing I'd already fixed, holding a cider going cold in my hands, with my heart pounding like I'd just confessed to a crime. Because maybe I had. What I didn't know yet, what neither of us knew that night, was that in less than a month, my ex-wife herself would come back to Cedar Harbor. And what she was about to say at that dinner table would either destroy everything I'd just buried, or set it free. For 3 weeks after that night, Sloane found reasons not to need me. The bookshop's roof was still leaking. I knew it was. I'd seen the bucket, but suddenly she didn't mention it. The shelf I'd been building for her sat half-finished in my shop, gathering sawdust. When I dropped by, she was always just heading out. When I called, she was always right in the middle of something. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself a lot of things back then. But the truth is, the silence between us had a sound. It was the sound of two people pretending a door hadn't opened and pretending they hadn't both looked through it. Then Tessa came home. I heard before I saw. In a town like Cedar Harbor, news travels faster than the wind off the lake. My ex-wife was back from Chicago, and she wasn't alone. She'd brought a man with her, a ring on her finger, a wedding being planned. I want to tell you it hurt. People expect it to hurt. The ex-wife, the new fiancée, the whole town watching to see if poor Caleb Hayes would finally crack. But standing in my shop when I got the news, sweeping curls of pine off the floor, I waited for the ache to come, and it didn't. What came instead was something gentler. Relief. Because if Tessa was happy, really, finally happy, then maybe we hadn't broken our marriage for nothing. Maybe we'd just been two people brave enough to admit we were the wrong fit, so we could each find the right one. The Lowell family invited me to dinner that Friday. Both of them did, actually. Tessa called me herself. "Come," she said. "It would mean a lot. We're family, Caleb. We'll always be family," so I went. God help me, I went. The Lowell house smelled like roast chicken and rosemary and the same lavender candle their mother had burned for 20 years. Mrs. Lowell hugged me at the door like I'd never stopped being her son-in-law. Tessa's fiancé, a kind-faced man named Daniel, shook my hand and meant it. And Tessa, she glowed. Whatever the city had taken from us, it had given her this. I was glad, I truly was. But across the table sat Sloane. She wouldn't look at me. She passed the potatoes without touching my hand. She laughed at all the right moments, but it was the careful laugh. The one she used on customers, not the real one. Not the one I'd been chasing for 2 years. And here's what I didn't notice. Because I was so busy not looking at Sloane. Tessa noticed everything. She'd known me for 10 years. She knew the exact way I held my fork when I was nervous. She watched her little sister go quiet every time I spoke. Watched me steal glances I thought nobody caught, and somewhere between the chicken and the pie, my ex-wife figured out a secret I'd been keeping even from myself. After dinner, I stepped out to the porch to breathe. The night was sharp and clean, the lake a sheet of black glass under the stars, and the screen door creaked behind me. It was Tessa. She came and stood beside me at the railing, the way we used to, back when we were young and thought love was simple. "You're in love with my sister," she said. Not a question, just the plain truth laid down soft between us. My stomach dropped through the porch boards. "Tessa, don't." She held up a hand, and she was smiling. "Caleb, look at me." I looked at her. "I left to find a life that fit me," she said. "I found it. I'm not angry that you'd find yours too. The only thing that would break my heart is if you spent the rest of it alone because you were scared of what people might say about a thing that's good and true." I couldn't speak. 2.5 years of guilt I'd been carrying like a stone, and the one person I thought I'd hurt was standing here, handing me permission I never dreamed I'd get. "She loves you too, you know," Tessa said quietly. "She just doesn't think she's allowed to." Then she squeezed my arm and went back inside, leaving me out there with the cold and the stars, and a heart suddenly too big for my chest. I thought that was the end of the fear. I thought that was the moment everything would finally turn. I was wrong, because what Tessa's blessing did to me set me free. It did the exact opposite to Sloane. I caught her alone 2 days later. Behind the bookshop counter, surrounded by boxes, I told her everything. I told her Tessa knew, that Tessa was happy for us, that there was nothing standing in our way anymore. The words tumbled out of me like water finally breaking through a dam. And Sloane started to cry, but not the way I'd dreamed. "Don't you get it?" she whispered, and her voice shook. "My whole life, Caleb. My whole life I've been the sister who stayed. Tessa got to leave and chase her dreams because I stayed home and took care of Mom. Tessa got the wedding, the city, the whole big life, and I got to be the one everybody could count on." She wiped her face with the back of her hand. "And now you, the one good thing that's just mine. And the second I let myself have you, the whole town's gonna whisper that Sloane took her sister's leftovers, that I couldn't even get a man of my own. I had to take hers. Sloane, that's not. I can't," she said. "I can't be anybody's second choice, not even yours." And she turned away from me, back to her boxes, her shoulders shaking. I left. What else could I do? I drove home with my hands tight on the wheel. That beautiful blessing from Tessa turned to ash in my mouth, because it turned out the thing standing between us was never the town, and never Tessa. It was the lie Sloane had been told her whole life, that she came second, that she always would. And I didn't know how to fight a lie that old. Winter came hard that year. The lake froze at the edges. The string lights came down, and Sloane and I stopped speaking altogether. Then, one grey morning in December, the call came. It was Marcus, the boy from my shop, his voice cracking through the phone. "Caleb," he said, "you gotta come to the bookshop. The bank's here. They're putting a sign in the window." And I knew, before he even said it, that the one thing Sloane had left, the one thing in this world that was hers and hers alone, was about to be taken from her too. I drove faster than I should have on those icy roads. When I got to Main Street, there it was, a man in a grey coat taping a notice to the bookshop window, "Foreclosure." White paper, black letters, slapped across the glass like a verdict. And through that window, behind the cardboard boxes and the stacks of unsold books, I could see Sloane sitting on the floor, not crying, worse than crying, just empty. "Done," I went in. The little bell over the door rang, the way it had 1,000 times when she'd look up and smile at me. This time she didn't look up at all. "You don't have to see this," she said quietly. "It's over, Caleb. I'm 3 months behind. There's nothing to fix. And here's the moment I'd spent 2 years learning how to handle. The old me, the man I was before the divorce broke me, and the work rebuilt me. That man would have pulled out his checkbook, fixed it, carried her, made himself the hero. But I finally understood something. The worst thing I could do for the woman I loved was hand her one more reason to believe she couldn't stand on her own. So I didn't reach for my wallet. I knelt down on that cold wooden floor beside her, and I said, "You're right. I can't fix this for you." She looked at me then, startled. "But I'm not going to let you carry it alone either," I said. "There's a difference. You spent your whole life thinking those are the same thing. They're not." I stood up, I pulled out my phone, and I started making calls. I called Marcus first, then the other shop kids, then their parents, and the hardware store, and the diner, and old Mr. Petrov, who'd been buying mystery novels from that shop for 30 years. I told every single one of them the same thing. Sloane Lowell has spent her whole life showing up for this town. It's time this town showed up for her, and Cedar Harbor came. You should have seen it. By that afternoon, the street outside her window was full of people. The diner sent food. The kids from my shop showed up with lumber and hammers and that fire in their eyes that I once thought was gone forever. We tore out the rotted shelving. We patched the leaking roof I'd been begging to fix for months. Marcus built a brand new storefront sign with his own 2 hands, and when he hung it, he turned to me with tears in his eyes and said, "You gave me a hammer once. Figured it was my turn." But it was the envelope that broke her. A courier brought it the next morning, overnight from Chicago. Inside was a check, big enough to clear every month she'd fallen behind, and a note in handwriting Sloane knew better than her own. "You stayed so I could go. Let me do this one thing. You were never second, Sloane. You were the strongest one of us all, Tessa." Sloane read it, standing in the middle of her saved shop, surrounded by the whole town, and she finally broke open. Not the empty crying from before. The other kind. The kind that washes a lie out of you after it's lived in your bones for 30 years. I crossed the room to her. The crowd went quiet. "I don't want to be saved," she whispered, looking up at me. "I'm so tired of being the strong one and the dependable one and the one who gets the leftovers." "Then don't be any of those things," I said. "Be the one who finally gets to want something. Be greedy for once in your life, Sloane. Be selfish. Pick the thing that's yours." "And what if the thing I want is you?" The whole shop held its breath. "Then for the first time in your life," I said, "you'd be putting yourself first. Because I'm not Tessa's, I'm not anybody's leftovers. I've been yours since the night you wrapped your scarf wrong and brought me cider and asked me a question I was too scared to answer." She laughed through her tears. That laugh. The real one. The one I'd been chasing for 2 years. And right there, in the middle of the bookshop she fought to keep, with snow falling soft against the window and the whole town watching, she chose me. Not because she needed me, because she wanted me. And there is a whole world of difference between those two things. The wedding was small, spring, down by the boatworks, with the lake throwing diamonds of light across everyone's faces. Tessa flew in and cried in the front row, holding Daniel's hand. Marcus stood beside me as my best man, 18 now, headed to trade school in the fall, the first in his family to ever go. The bookshop is thriving. There's a corner now where I sell the furniture I build, right beside the poetry section, and people come from 3 towns over just to sit in those chairs and read. And here's the part I think about most. Last week, at the spring festival, a young woman new to town came up to me while I was, you guessed it, fixing that same bandstand railing. She didn't know my story. She tilted her head the exact way someone did once, and she asked me, "Why's a man like you still single?" I set down my sandpaper. I looked across the screen to where Sloane was laughing in the sunlight with a baby on her hip. Our baby, a little girl with her mother's stubborn eyes, and I smiled. "Oh, I'm not single," I said. "I was just waiting a long time for the right reason to stop." Turns out she was standing in front of me the whole time, asking me questions I was too afraid to answer. Because that's the thing nobody tells you about the day your life breaks apart. The pieces don't have to stay broken. Sometimes you pick them up and you build something with your own 2 hands, something truer and stronger and more beautiful than the thing you lost. The life you build after the breaking can be the truest life of all. So here's my question for you. Somewhere in your life, is there a truth you've been too afraid to say out loud? A love, a dream, a because of you sitting right there on the tip of your tongue? And if you knew, like Caleb finally did, that the only thing standing in your way was your own fear, what would you finally allow yourself to want? Tell me in the comments. I'm reading every single one.